Στο σημείο αυτό θα ήθελα να καλωσορίσω στην οθόνη πια την κυρία Schuhbauer, που όπως είπαμε δυστυχώς δεν μπορούσε να είναι μαζί μας σήμερα, αλλά έχει την ευγενική καλοσύνη να είναι μαζί μας έστω και μέσω οθόνης. Hello, Birgit again. Είναι Vice President του Self-Care EMEA και Developed Markets στην J&J Consumer Ευρώπης. Και έχει πάρα πολύ μεγάλη εμπειρία στο χώρο αυτό, από την Colgate, από την Pfizer Consumer και τώρα στη J&J, και νομίζω ότι θα είναι πολύ ενδιαφέρον να ακούσουμε τη σκοπιά μιας μεγάλης πολυεθνικής εταιρείας στο χώρο, και γι' αυτό το λόγο σκεφτήκα να ετοιμάσουμε μερικές ερωτήσεις για την κυρία Schuhbauer και θα ξεκινήσω με την πρώτη. Miss Schuhbauer, how broad is the term self-care in the today's world? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. I repeat the question. How broad is the term self-care in the today's world?
Thank you. Let me first say hello, and hello to the conference audience there, and thank you for inviting me. I think that's very kind of you, and also I think thanks to technology, it's fantastic that this works. So, greetings from Switzerland. Now to your question, George, how broad is the term self-care? I mean, obviously, I guess it's a term that many people may have different definitions. What we can see is widening. So I mean, basically, in our perspective, it starts with prevention, and also it goes all the way from prevention, eventually diagnosis, treatment, and then replenishment or recovery. But you could also say eventually, it may also include mental preventative healthcare initiatives such as healthy food, physical activity. So it's really pretty wide. But I think, in the work of the industry, I think it's largely prevention, treatment, replenishment.
Thank you. We heard from Jurate earlier that there are some trends in this area. According to your experience and according to the data you are working with, what are the global trends in this self-care business today?
I mean, what we do see, of course, is linked to digitization. So what we do see is that people are getting much more informed. They research self-care a lot, and also specific indications. But also they're looking for more holistic solutions. So it's not enough to sell them medicine or to sell them pills and the tablets, but they're looking for more holistic solutions, which may include apps nowadays, which may include devices that help them to diagnose a certain ailment. And basically, ideally, they look at a solution which links all together, maybe an app and a device, and then medical treatment. So it's more holistic, and it's also a bit more complex from that end. But at the end of the day, I mean, they want a solution to their problem, not just a specific product that we give to them.
Okay, thank you. I was some months ago at the Medica in Düsseldorf, and I saw a lot of products coming out. You said combination between self-care products, medical devices, services, and all this. Do you see any other categories where you think that they will increase or rise in the next years?
You mean other self-care categories? Exactly. Well, I guess. I mean, when you look at the classic self-care categories that we see today, like vitamins and minerals, cough and cold, pain, digestive health, allergies. So I mean, we have seen some movements, but I mean, altogether, it's also fair to say that I mean, cough cold has been a huge category 30 years ago, and it's still the biggest category if you put vitamins and minerals aside. So amongst what's mainly driven by OTC drugs, I think the other categories haven't changed so much. Nevertheless, where we see a need, and I think if the right answers are available, those are trends and categories that will develop. I mean, that's anything around sleep. We know that sleep issues are getting bigger. Mental acuity. With aging population, people want to stay sharp. So there's certainly a big need, which is looking for an answer. I would say also all sort of mental disorders. Then we certainly see anything that has to do with stress, where people, because we know people do have more stressful lives, and there is a need to alleviate people or to help them to manage the stress. But then we also see a trend to more natural solutions. I think that's a big global trend. And then obviously you also see categories which have to do with aging. So, for example, anything that treats body ache, like which is coming just from aging, like knee ache, back ache, etc. So anything that's linked to aging, or you see when you look at, for example, eye drops, the need for dry eye is significantly increasing, because as people get older and take more medicine, very often dry eye is a side effect of it. So I think we have a whole array of categories which are going to increase or which will come into life.
Okay, thank you. As a leader of such a big company in the field, what are the opportunities and challenges you are facing today in this area?
I mean, let's start with the opportunities. Obviously, as I just alluded to, I think there are a lot of growth opportunities. I think that it's fair to say that the sky is wide open to us. It's just depending on where we want to engage and what we want to do. But I think it's without any doubt that self-care does have a pretty bright future and is a growing industry category or a growing market. So what are the challenges? I think there are challenges that I think there's an overall, I would say, anti-chemical industry, anti-pharmaceutical industry attitude. I mean, people, that's also, as I said earlier, there's a big trend to herbal medicine, to natural. So I think chemicals are a bit mal regarded nowadays, which is something that we also as an industry, and we're also working with ASCP in order to improve trust there, because we think it's something that we should deal with. Then, I mean, very currently, and that's a challenge of the overall drug industry, and I'm talking drugs here, that is certainly the issue around supply of certain medicines, of active ingredients for these medicines. So the so-called shortage of medicine, which is something that we're dealing with. And certainly also what we see is an increased scrutiny and increasing requirements in whether it's for drug registration, safety requirements, etc., which is sometimes making it pretty hard for OTC products, which are per se older, so they may be 50, 60 years old, well-established medicines. So it's sometimes really challenging to keep everything up to date and to cope with the most recent requirements. Now, it's fair to say that that's probably easier for a multinational like us versus a smaller player. But I would also say, on the other hand, from the perspective of a multinational, I think what we do see is that nimble, small local players are sometimes have the advantage of being fast, of have faster decision makers, and that's why sometimes they are with specific offerings. They're just faster. They are sort of smarter in a way that to understand the consumer need and bring it to the market. And so at the end of the day, it's very often that small local players that give us a hard time in terms of market share.
Okay. I had another question, but I see now also a question from the audience, which is pretty similar. I think that you will agree that the patients or the consumers, they have a lot of decision power today. And we have a question here representing the biggest consumer healthcare. Tell us, what are the common and new characteristics or needs from the consumer side? Do you see consumer space being open to smaller size companies and startups?
I think they're open to both. I think it depends who responds to their needs, who understands them better, problems, or who gives them an answer to their question or a solution. Now, as I said earlier, there might be situations where smaller companies can act quicker because they're more nimble. But I think it's also fair to say that, you know, I mean, we shouldn't ignore the importance of brands and also the trust that a brand or a company has. And at the end of the day, we'll still talk about a serious topic. So therefore, I think the credibility and the trust and knowing where something comes from is still very important for the consumer.
And living in a digitalized world today, how important is the role of the internet, the social media, and the influencers in the new world?
I think, I mean, first of all, it's clear that digitalization is everywhere. So obviously also in our communication, like in the entire communication market. I think it's also fair to say that digital communication to the consumer is very relevant to us, and it's very interesting because it's interesting in a way that for example, we are selling the product Nicorette for smoking cessation. So before digital, basically we would advertise to anybody, mainly through TV. But I mean, knowing that depending on the country, 80% of the population is not smoking, so it's completely irrelevant for them. Nowadays, with digital, we can be much more targeted. So you could say there are categories which are very general, like cough and cold, which can hit everybody, but then there are categories which are more targeted, and there it's obviously it's a big move. So it's really interesting for us to target well and to reach those consumers. It's also, and I know many of you are from RX Pharma, so I think it's also relevant when you talk to the doctors, because many companies cannot afford these big field forces anymore. Or not doing that anymore. So basically, it's also a very interesting tool to reach out to doctors and to do professional work with them and to disseminate the information that way. But I think it's also fair to say that, I mean, I've seen very often where people think, okay, you do digital and somehow people think it's cheaper and easier. At least I guess those who are not operationally doing it. And in reality, I mean, it's extremely fast. So, I mean, eventually, you know, produce those fancy communication assets anymore. You don't do anymore the big films that cost $1 million in production and that you put on TV for the next 3 years. But you do a lot of, I would say, fast and cheap films because you need, or online or videos, because you need to change them very often. So it's, from that perspective, it's extremely fast, it's very intense, and it's, I would say, it's a resource and people intense. And obviously, this creates a new profession, which is a data scientist. When I went to business school, that didn't exist. So now, we are looking for data analysts, which is a complete new discipline. So I think what I want to say is that our way how we, I mean, the medium, how we communicate with consumers and doctors is entirely changing. Yes, I think what we shouldn't forget in marketing, content is still king. It's not just about the form, how you do it. I mean, if you have content, it still won't deliver. So I think we still need to challenge our brain and develop content.
We live in Greece, and you know, in Greece, the role of the pharmacist is very important, specific in the rural areas. Sometimes they replace the general practitioners in some areas. In this new context, do you think that the role of the traditional pharmacist will change in the next years?
I mean, the pharmacist, it's very hard for pharmacists will change because it's also digitization. But first, I believe that the role of the pharmacist will become more important because people will go less to the doctor. I think we talked that earlier in your ASUS presentation. The treatments are expensive. I mean, in principle, national healthcare providers or the healthcare politicians have interest to have less people going to the doctor for many diseases, which I think we cannot agree on. We want to have the resource for the more serious ones. But this means that consumers need to have somebody to talk to. I mean, yes, we heard that they look in Google, etc., and inform them there. But then I think we all can agree that there's still need for information and need for guidance. You may take different methods. So therefore, I think we talk a lot about the top of care, and therefore I think the advice, the professional role of the pharmacist will increase. And I mean, that's also what we and how we engage, to be quite honest. And so, I mean, also we should get pharmacists are a top in all our countries. Pharmacists are always amongst the most professionals and big capital.
Good. So all the pharmacists in the hall here should be happy then for the future. Last question now. Our audience here are experienced marketeers from the pharmaceutical field or from the healthcare field. As a leader of one of the biggest companies in this field, which skills do you think that our colleagues here, whether they have to improve or they have to develop in order to be successful in the next decade?
Well, I guess I've worked all my life in consulting. I wouldn't be able to give advice here about what kind of people need to have when they do RX marketing. So I will talk about consumer or healthcare marketing, and I think what people that enter this business or this type of workplaces need to learn is digital marketing. I mean, it's a total must. Digital marketing, but I feel data analysis. They need to have a full understanding of those tools that are available to us, or social listening, these kind of things that obviously were nothing that we did 10 years ago. But I think as a young marketer, we need to be totally familiar with that. And the other point is also, I mean, maybe not as but as attitude. I mean, it's really going super fast. So, I mean, in digital communication, you look at certain KPIs, evaluate the effectiveness of your communication, but the KPIs may change how. It's extremely fast. We need to adapt and be constantly curious and further develop.
Okay. So thank you very much, Birgit. It was very interesting talking to you and hearing your view about our today's topic, self-care. How's the weather in Switzerland today?
It's gray. The sunset is coming soon, but at least there's no fog. I can see the lake of Zug.
So next time you should join us here. We have 20 degrees today. So you are welcome next time to join us and to have you face to face here. Thank you very much. I know that you are very busy and you may have to leave, but you please feel free to stay and hear the next presenters. Thank you very much again, Birgit. Ακούσαμε λοιπόν και τη σκοπιά της πολυεθνικής εταιρείας.